David and I, in the duration of our marriage, had had a vision of creating a alternative energied home. And when we finally got to where we could do something like that, we looked all over Santa Cruz County and ended up deciding that we would move to Bonny Doon because this was an area where people were more open to alternatives. It wasn't going to get too gentrified for our style. And we moved here in 1980 to create this little, what would we call it, estate, compound. And it's all powered with solar energy, and it's been a very, very fun experiment. Bonny Doon, when we moved here, we actually bought the property in '80 and worked on it for 3 years. It had been a hippie commune throughout the whole 60s and 70s and was covered with the detritus of that. And so it took us 3 years to clean the property up and then get this cabin that I'm sitting in right now built, which we did without any power. And Bonny Doon at that point in time was considered really where the people who couldn't do any better lived. The kids in the high school were treated, they were maligned and called Dooners and called waffle stompers because of their boots for being able to get to their house. Our driveway was impassable when we bought the property, and you had to walk up. Some people tried using snow chains in the mud. And so a lot has happened. A lot of very tolerant gentrification. There are people who would call us, with disdain, the 12-volt middle class. As Santa Cruz got more populous, Bonny Doon got discovered. It got discovered for its beautiful ocean views and lovely climate and proximity to town. And of course, the growth of the university made Bonny Doon become a natural for students who wanted to stay in town and could find a place they could afford. And so Bonny Doon developed in some really nice ways because some very intelligent, liberal-minded people ended up buying here and staying. So Bonny Doon has a community of people who aren't moving often. There's a lot of people who have stayed and created community, and it's really very lovely that way. I started making candles and selling candles to friends right out of my kitchen in the 70s, and that went all the way up until when David and I were finally able to build a real house. And when we built a real house, we moved across the driveway into the real house, and right then was when we went to Nicaragua for 8 weeks to build houses in the war zone during the Contra War for the refugees. And that was such a consciousness shifting experience that when we came back, I was hugely challenged as what was right livelihood, what's a valid way to make a buck and live a comfortable, wonderful life, but also do no harm sort of deal. And I decided that one of the best things that you can do is create good jobs. Good, fun, respectable jobs where you're treated right. And so I decided that I would use the cabin to grow the candle business to where I had employees and was creating jobs for people. Well, we started out doing just plain beeswax candles with some color, and then we evolved into scented beeswax candles, and I use steam distilled essential oils only because the chemically distilled essential oils create too much toxic waste in their manufacture. There's no toxins in the candle. They're perfectly fine as a candle. It's just that, I have my, if I'm going to bother to spend my time doing it, I want to do it with a certain criteria, and that was mine. And so then we added the scented beeswax candles, and that was very, very, very successful. People loved it, and people who want a natural item still want scent. And then I added color, and that is kind of a, different thing. And we all love color. And so I found colors where it's a very, very small percentage of the candle to make it a color in terms of purity and all of that, and pollution. But I guess the biggest way it evolved was in my knowledge, because it was really kind of witchy the way it worked. Before I had a candle business, I had a baking business. When Santa Cruz had no bakeries, I had a baking business out of my backyard, and I did all of the pastries for Pergolesi and Kumbwa, and did weddings, and I had a 8-burner, huge griddle, big restaurant stove in the backyard, and the neighbors would come around and go, "Do you smell chocolate a couple of days a week?" And I was known as the brownie lady. And in my years of doing that baking, I realized it was so exhausting because of its shelf life, and everything had to be made the day it was delivered and all of that, cooking is what I do. I'm a cook, and I mess around with, that's my chemistry. And so I tried to think of something that would have a shelf life that you cooked. And so that kind of alchemy worked really well for me with the beeswax and my love of the candles. I'm stopping because the business stopped making money, and it stopped making money because of a changing world, and I wasn't able to find someone who had young energy to take it where it needs to go now, which is you could still do this business and do it well if you were a beekeeper who already had the wax, so you would have that element already paid for, or you were ready to take it to a place where labor is cheaper, and you could treat employees in a proper manner and still make the fine product. But it's a changing world. That's not what's happening in the United States now.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's either going to be art. You can take it to the point of being an art piece and be successful. But a craft with employees in Santa Cruz, people even here in the neighborhood have told me that I overpay my employees, and I don't pay them anywhere close to a living wage, nothing close.
Yeah.
The business was, I thought, growing and growing and growing, and I actually had hired someone to do careful financials. I probably shouldn't have done that, but when you're doing something that you have such a deep connection to, it's probably not a good idea to think about it in terms of bottom line. Fondest memories are huge success, like doing the Green Festival and having customers just like, oh, yes. Those memories are fond. Success, like when Manhattan got me and I got into some Dean and DeLuca and places like that. That was really great, because we all want some acknowledgement, and I'm up here on this mountain making candles, and so that was really great. Creating the recipes for the candles is very, very dear to me. That whole process, and then the rest was working with the staff. We had huge fun. My ad for employees would always start out, "Are you a happy person?" And we had huge fun, and we all brought each other along in the world, and that's very dear.
Yeah.
Economic turnaround that this nation is experiencing, I'm guessing that the next 5 years will find me working. In the next 10, even if I am fortunate enough to stay vigorous. Besides, I don't want to get bored. I don't want to just sit and make candles. I want to do more.